Hello and welcome to my channel, the #1 place for singers looking to become profitable in the new music business. I'm Fiona Flyte, and on Wednesdays I share videos about mindset, marketing, and monetization specifically for singers who want to be in the driver's seats of their own careers. And on Fridays I share my own singing to inspire you to share yours. In today's video, we're going to figure out how to thrive on social media as a performing artist when you truly hate self-promotion and struggle with the idea of putting yourself out there. The fact is that many of us who love performing for people don't necessarily like talking to them. And although we're happiest singing in front of large groups, it can be a huge struggle to simply mingle or network with them online. And you know what? I'm right there with you. What I most want to do is get on stage. What I least want to do is go to a party. What I most want is for people to find and share my music. What I least want is to directly ask for the share. So what's an introverted artist type supposed to do in the new music business when they know leveraging social media is the key to becoming profitable, but a part of them still hates the very idea of asking even a close friend to come to their show? Well, that's just what we're going to cover in this series of 15 practical and mindset-related tips. How to be social on social media, even if you're an introvert. The first tip is that you must have a reason to build your online presence that really matters to you personally. And the problem is that most of us are struggling with imposter syndrome and have critical inner voices saying things like, "Your music doesn't really matter. Who cares? There are lots of better singers out there. I don't have enough experience. Who am I to think that people should listen to me? Who am I to think that I deserve to be heard?" And I've got to tell you that this kind of negative self-talk is at the root of not only your problem with social media, but with your career in general. So when I say that you have to have a reason to share that is really important, what I'm really saying is that you have to have a reason that is louder, more profound, and more energizing and inspiring than your inner critic. So spend some time really embracing your why. Why do you sing? Why do you create music? Why does music, and your music in particular, really matter? The following tips may feel like a bit of tough love or highly challenging for an introvert, but you know what? I'm okay with that because I know your voice deserves to be heard, and the only way it'll be heard is if you start to use it. The next tip is to think about social media engagement as if it was an actual job. We've always worn many hats as singers, actors, performers, and creators. And in the new music business, we need to consciously put on a few more. And one of them is social media manager. Schedule regular times throughout the week to put on your social media manager hat. And during those times, focus on all the things you know to do that have to do with building your following. Things like batching photos and captions, but also actually posting, resharing, commenting, following. Choose to spend time on the platforms of your choice on a truly regular basis. Make this kind of engagement a new habit. This is very different from the bad habit of going on social media simply to kill time. When you use social media as a method of procrastination, it's likely you'll start in with the comparisons, thinking that everyone's life looks better than yours. No! Focus on the task of engagement. This is your job as the marketing manager of your own singing business. Tip 3 is to read The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. I recommend this book to just about every artist I meet, and reading this book will truly help you with both tip 1 and tip 2, because Pressfield is writing, among other things, about pushing through the resistance that fuels our imposter syndrome, in part by sitting down to do the work. I'll let him do the talking from page 43. The professional has learned that success, like happiness, comes as a byproduct of work. The professional concentrates on the work and allows rewards to come or not come, whatever they like. And page 88. The professional loves her work. She is invested in it wholeheartedly, but she does not forget that the work is not her. Her artistic self contains many works and many performances. Already the next is percolating inside her. The next will be better, and the one after that better still. Which is a great segue into tip number 4. We have to be willing to get it wrong. I don't know about you, but as a Gen Xer, I see myself straddling 2 generations when it comes to social media. On the one hand, there's a part of me that deeply fears Big Brother. Not the TV show, though that's pretty scary too. But George Orwell's Big Brother from his book, 1984. It's kind of like a lurking anxiety that I've given away my privacy and will suffer the consequences. And since I don't actually know exactly what those consequences are, I used to walk around with a constant simmering of low-level anxiety. But on the other hand, I'm surrounded by the digital natives like my children, growing up with no knowledge of a pre-internet world. And many of them seem to be thriving with no concern that the pictures they post as adolescents will somehow haunt them in middle age. And what I'm coming to see is that people do get it wrong, and they get it wrong all the time. But in this fast-paced news cycle, everyone's already forgotten about the drunken beach party that ended up online last year, let alone the bad cover song you posted last month. And no one really cared in the first place. So with that in mind, post way more frequently than you feel comfortable with. And since you probably don't feel comfortable to begin with, that means just start posting. Start experimenting. Start playing around. The more you post, the more opportunities you give the algorithm of your preferred platform the opportunity to find you and push out your content. I get very tired of hearing from singers that they need a viral video. So they waste lots of time trying to come up with some viral concept, while all the time they aren't posting anything. Just like overnight successes, the viral videos that'll have the most profound impact on your career as a performing artist happen when a number of circumstances collide. And one of those circumstances is that you've been producing regular content, sharing your art with the world on a consistent basis, and giving people the opportunity to find you in the first place. And with all this content you're producing, don't be afraid to look stupid. We are always our own worst critics. Your job is not to judge your art. Leave that to the real critics, and when they do, just ignore them. Your job is to make the art. Here's another quote from The War of Art, page 163. That's why an artist must be a warrior. And like all warriors, artists over time acquire modesty and humility. They may, some of them, conduct themselves flamboyantly in public, but alone with the work, they are chaste and humble. They know they are not the source of the creations they bring into being. They only facilitate. They carry. They are the willing and skilled instruments of the gods and goddesses they serve. The truth is, you don't really know if your post or your song is good or bad, and most of the time you're likely to think it's bad, and therefore not share it. But you've got to share. You've got to take risks. You've got to trust that your own personal muse has got your back. So don't hold back for fear of looking stupid. Take the leap. Be willing to look stupid, be stupid, to be bad. Acting with courage is not acting without fear. It's taking action in spite of your fear. Tip 7. Every individual needs caring people in their lives, even those of us who are introverted. However, as an introvert, you probably prefer not to hang out in large groups. And what's the internet if not the largest of large groups? So, how can you spend time on social media without feeling like you're dying a slow, excruciating death? Well, just like in life, you can relate to people one-to-one in real and authentic ways. When you put on your social media manager hat, go looking for one-to-one conversations. Look for posts that really uplift and inspire you, and then leave a comment. When someone comments on your post, consider thanking them in a DM and not just with a heart on their comment. Yes, there are some bots and ghost accounts, but on average, the majority of accounts I engage with have very real people on the other side of them, just like you and me. And simply by resharing someone's post to my story, I have received the most lovely DMs that have started real conversations. And should I hazard it? Yes, I will. The beginnings of real friendships. So if you're an introvert, you often prefer to watch rather than be watched. But if you're also a performer, then this makes for a challenging dichotomy because you have to be willing to be seen, and people will see you. And what I mean by be seen is your inner self, not your outer self. In order to succeed on social media, you have to share your most authentic self, your real thoughts, opinions, and feelings. This doesn't mean you should be mean or totally unfiltered. It just means that whatever makes you uniquely you, that's what will most resonate with everyone else. I recently heard a great quote. What is most personal is most universal. And those are words I live by, at least in terms of social media. So if I think something like, my perfectionism is keeping me from posting on my grid because I've been told my feed should look like a magazine spread, then that's what I'm going to share. And when I did share it, here are just a few of the comments I received. OMG, I love this post. I find myself with the same internal battle about this stuff. And then it's like, is this what's seriously keeping me from sharing? Yes, I also suffer from the same thing. I wonder how long my perfectly poised grid will last. I love your Instagram. So my point is, be yourself and allow us to see you as you really are, not as you think we want to see you. Referring back to tip 4, come to terms with Big Brother. Either accept that Big Brother exists and we no longer have a right to privacy, or decide that Big Brother doesn't exist and is just a boogeyman created by the Cold War. It really doesn't matter one way or the other. Lately, I've been thinking of Big Brother as a big salesperson, and all he wants to do is sell me stuff. So at the end of the day, sometimes I buy the stuff and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I keep what I bought and sometimes I return it. Tip 10 is super important. You have to be willing to fail, and not once or twice, but multiple times. Fail over and over and over again. This applies to your art as well as your social media. I remember when I took my first improv class in San Francisco. The teacher on the very first day had us throw our arms in the air and not just announce, but cheer, "We failed! I failed!" She wanted us to viscerally understand that failing is a good thing. Failure helps us to learn, grow, and stretch. So to the best of my ability, I remember to cheer my failures as soon as I stopped crying. But after failing, remember that your poor results are really the best kind of market research. And honestly, I had no idea this was the case until I ventured into the world of business and social media and started thinking of my singing career as a real business and not just the core of my very soul. What I mean is that we identify so personally with the success or failure of every song, performance, or recording that we lose all perspective. This especially goes for auditions. I remember a time where after every 5 or so auditions that didn't end with offers, I'd take another extended audition break. I just couldn't deal with the perceived rejection and had to take months off to gear myself up again to do another round. But today, in terms of social media, if a post doesn't get many likes, I may be disappointed, but I quickly take a deeper dive into my analytics, as well as the content itself, to see why it didn't perform as I'd hoped or expected. I don't waste time blaming the algorithm or blaming myself. Instead, I compare the time of day I posted to when my audience is online. I take another look at the content itself and think about how I could have improved the first sentence and photo editing to add more pop. But what about the trolls, you ask? They're big, they're ugly, they're many, they're mighty, they're scary. And you know what? I'm not going to argue with any of those limiting beliefs right now. Instead, I'm going to focus on one small mindset shift that completely changed my perspective on trolls. In fact, I can't wait to get my first really negative feedback. You know why? Because it'll mean that my content is finally reaching a broader audience. Generally speaking, we don't attract the trolls until we've gone way out of our comfort zones and are really making a positive impact. So, if I'm being completely honest, I'm scared of trolls just like you. But I'm looking forward to what they represent, being at a place in my business and online presence where I start to attract them. Because I know it'll mean that I'm growing a significant audience. And along the same line as trolls, take nothing personally, even if it is personal. The truth is that your singing business really matters. It matters to you personally, but it also matters in the broader sense because you do have a gift. We all do. You do have an authentic voice, and in order for your voice to be heard, you have to develop a thicker skin to criticism and negative feedback of all kinds. The more you think of your singing as a function of your creative business, and the more you refer back to tip 1 and focus on the big why of your contribution, then it really won't matter what anyone else is saying or thinking about you. What will matter is that you're using and sharing your voice. You're getting your own unique message out into the world and being a force of positivity, whatever your musical genre, simply in the fact of sharing your art, because art has meaning in and of itself. Tip 14 is to have patience and be in it for the long haul. Right now, my YouTube videos are averaging less than 100 views, and some of them are less than 50. It's a similar situation over on Instagram. But you know what? That's okay, because I truly understand that by being consistent, I'm giving you time to find me, to engage with me, to share my content. I don't expect my first videos to go viral. In fact, a viral video at this stage could be a disaster. I'd likely feel overwhelmed and totally unprepared for the response or the pressure to repeat it. However, I do expect a video to go viral down the road, and when it does, I'll have a wealth of content to back it up. And through the process of creating all these videos, photos, and captions, I'm getting ready to be ready. What I mean is, I'll be ready as I attract more and more people to my personal brand. And the fact that I'm also an introvert won't stand in my way. So stop getting in your own way. Trust yourself, your instincts, and your creativity. As Pressfield writes on page 146, our job in this lifetime is not to shape ourselves into some ideal we imagine we ought to be, but to find out who we already are and become it. And when you're struggling to figure out your why because your imposter syndrome has got you by the throat, remember this quote from The War of Art as well. Creative work is not a selfish act or a bid for attention on the part of the actor. It's a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got. Hopefully by now I've convinced you that you too can thrive on social media, but certain features like Instagram stories still freak you out. You've heard you should be posting stories, and especially video stories, but you don't know where to start. So you'll definitely want to hit the notification bell, because in my next video, we're going to do a deep dive into all the best practices for Instagram stories. Now, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and like it, subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments, because your feedback helps the introvert in me remember my why. And if you've watched to the end of this video, it probably means you're interested in growing on social media. So definitely check out my other videos about Instagram, including the biggest mistake I see actors and singers making while engaging with the platform. Now, go out into the world and let your light shine. You deserve to be heard, and the world deserves to hear you.